All right. Well, hey, folks, welcome to another episode of The Security Table. And my name is Chris Romeo, joined by Izar Tarandach, Matt Coles, the normal gang around the mahogany table.
Well, wait, normal? Say that again?
Okay. Well, that was just I was trying to use a nice
Usual.
adjective to describe you.
He means usual.
The usual.
The
The usual. Well, we are joined by our good friend, Brook Schoenfield, who it's always a joy to, whenever I get a chance to interact with Brook, it's always just such a joy because I learn many things and I hear many stories. And so that's the plan for this episode. We're just here. We're going to learn from Brook. We're going to hear some stories. We're going to throw some things out, some hot takes that Brook can react to. And then people that listen to the show know will react to. We won't be able to.
Let me react
And then
to that.
Brook will react to our responses.
Right.
And
There are three people on this call, the other three people, who are among the dearest people in my life. Forget the industry, but in my life,
Cheers.
three of my dearest friends, and they have taught me so much. My practice has changed radically in the interaction with each of these people. And so, it's both a joy and always a privilege to talk to you folks because, wow, you're the best. You really are.
If we're still friends after this, it'll be a miracle. No, if we're still friends after this, we did something wrong.
we did not push the envelope enough. We needed to push the envelope further. Well, let's start. Yeah, I don't have an envelope. Does anyone even have a paper envelope anymore? How do you push an envelope? I don't even understand. That was raise the roof. That was raise the roof. Come on, I taught you. Matt has literally left the show.
At least my Mac is not doing anything when I'm moving.
Okay, no, Matt's back. He has envelopes. Those
you
are
have to push
envelopes.
it, Matt. You have to push it.
They are so old. They're so old. They got sealed just by the humidity in the room over time.
They're all addressed to the Internal Revenue Service for some reason. I'm not sure why he has a stack of.
It's all the hate mail that I've been saving up to send.
Wait, you're not sending it to our show, are you?
Wait.
You're one of the hosts.
Does any of those come from Australia?
No, there's no hate.
Did I have sweat from the treadmill? How do we know that none of these are coming from our favorite fan who keeps on sending us stuff?
Yeah, we do have a favorite fan, but we also want to offer a shout out to those people in Australia.
Oh yeah,
because they're blowing up our downloads. Not lying. That's
and Dublin.
In Dublin, but fairly that's the city we're the most popular in. So another shout out to Dublin. But let's get to Brook. We've spent enough time goofing around, which is kind of the story of all three of our lives. Brook, let's tell this story about this book. You were telling us before we started about how you're a prolific writer, author. You've written a bunch of different things, but you were telling us a kind of a behind the scenes story about one of the books that you had written, and I think it's something that people need to hear.
Okay, well, it's the third book after Core Software Security, where I wrote a chapter, and then I wrote Securing Systems, and I thought, there's so much material in here. All I got to do is cut out the best parts and put it in a new way and figure it out in some way, and I'll have another book out, and it'll be great, and it'll be called something like Secrets of a Security Architect or something like that. Or Tricks of the Trade. That's actually the working title I had, Tricks of the Trade, right? And I thought this is going to be trivial. So I cut out all these little pieces and I assembled them. I used a script writing piece of software to assemble all these. And that's how they write scripts, by the way. You assemble pieces and it allows you to do that really well. I don't know, in the comedy world, do you use the same kind of thing for assembling scripts for your talks, Chris? I know you do some stand-up comedy. I imagine it's the same.
I don't do stand-up. I do comedy in very many places because I think I'm funny, but it's never.
But you are standing up when you do them. No. I think that you are mixing the on purpose. I don't do stand up on purpose.
On purpose, yes.
You don't make a living at it.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm writing these things thinking this is all going to be really great. It's going to be really easy. I'll write a little introduction and I'll write a little section header and say what this is all about, and I'll arrange them in an order, and it will take me, a few weeks and it'll be done. And after I did it, and after I paid someone to try and arrange them by things because I wasn't getting around to it, it was such a god-awful mess of nonsense. Not that my individual pieces were nonsense, but it just didn't come together. It didn't have a through line. It didn't have a feel of a book, or, it just little bits. It was horrible. It literally was horrible. I still have all that stuff laying around. I could even show it. No, I won't, because it's really boring. But the thing is, by then a year had passed, and I promised a draft in a year, and then I had to go back to the publisher, who's like, "Where's my copy? When is it going to be? When is it going to be? When is it going to be?" And I'm like, "This is junk. I don't have it." And they said, "Okay, how long?" "Well, another year. I'll write. Just give me another year. I'll write." So it took a year for me to figure out what the through line of Secrets of a Cybersecurity Architect. By the way, the cyber was stuck in there by the publisher. I would never have put that in my title.
You told me, yeah.
However, that they felt they needed that cyber in there. So it's not a word I like using except in certain contexts, but nevertheless. So that took me a year, and I just kept fiddling and worrying about it and trying to write stuff and throwing it out. And then after about a year, it came to me how this book comes together into a whole, and where some of that material might fall. Although I used almost none of those quotes, I rewrote everything. But it finally came to me what the form of the book was. So then it took another year to actually write that book. And so that's the story of Secrets and how it actually came around. Now, more than once, some reader, all of the 20 people who've read that book, a couple of them have come back to me and said, this is really good. And it's, a couple of people have called it a Bible. A couple of my books have been called a Bible, of their subject. And that's really, really, oh my God, don't you wish that? That's useful to somebody. So apparently, eventually I did get a book that was useful, but man, that was the roughest process yet, I have to say.
The latest one is definitely the Bible. The one that you wrote with Dr. Ransom.
Yeah, well, we
tried security development. That one is a Bible. But on the memories, what's the story in there that you like the most?
Well, just for writers when they're writing or any project, is don't give up. If you have an idea, don't give up. But you've got to find what it is, and of course there'll be dead ends. Of course, think about this book we're working on now, collectively. I wrote a preface, and Adam came in. Yeah, we're supposed to not talk about it, but Adam came in and said your preface isn't right, and I'm rewriting it. It's okay.
Look, nobody heard anything. Forget about it. Do we have the flasher thing?
Brook is a living embodiment of numerous security properties and principles.
Yeah, but my OPSEC is terrible.
He lives open source to the core.
He's just open sourcing everything. All right. Well, Brook, here's a question for you. So you worked in and around the field of engineering for, I want to say 40 plus years. Am I right with that number? I think
this October will be 40 years.
Be 40 years. Okay. And
what day exactly?
I don't remember.
Izar's going to celebrate.
October. I forgot the month.
Your work anniversary. But when you look back across that 40-year career, I guess what are some of the takeaways that come to mind that would be good to share with people that are at various stages of their career? Because I'm always curious when somebody is a practitioner in one thing for so long, like you were driven to it. Like just tell us some of the takeaways. Tell us some things
Well,
that you've learned along your
what
journey.
what kept you here too? Like how did you sustain that for so long? Would be
Well,
great to
that's a
hear.
great question, Matt. That is a truly great question. Um, to be honest, I was a musician and an activist and a part-time college professor. I loved teaching, loved, but I didn't have enough work to make a whole living. And I was really doing well as a musician, right? And I kind of threw it all away to join a community of people that I really loved and loved working with, being an anti-nuclear activist in San Francisco. So there's a little background here. And I hated the work, loved the people, hated the work. I'm not going to be an activist. Well, I am an activist, as you know, in terms of what I want to change. I do bring that to everything I do. But nevertheless, I didn't really like the work at all. And it wasn't going to sustain me. And it wasn't enough money to raise a kid, which I wanted to have. And so we were talking about having a kid. So, um, there were some problems there. And I remembered that I'd done really well with programming and computers in my master's. And I thought, I wonder if I can do this. We were writing a little program. In those days, mail merge wasn't something that you had as part of your word processor. It was something you wrote. And we were writing a mail merge, and the person doing it decided they didn't want to do it. They were volunteering. And I said, that looks a lot like the code that I was writing in college. I'll bet I can do this. And once I'd written that, I realized this is fun. So that's the first thing. I realized there's an intersection in careers between what people will pay for, what you can stand doing, or better if it's fun, and coding is fun, for me anyway. And at the same time, something you can sustain for a long time that people will pay you for, right? And that was a nice thing. And I needed to make more money. That was really the reason. And I wanted a little more freedom in my life um, than the standard type office job or going into a retail or doing anything like that. And I said, I can do this. And I could do it. And it turns out I could do it pretty well. And so then I got a job. So that was my first commercial project. That was in 1984, 85. And then I got a real job. And I just studied computer science as hard and as difficult as I have. So that's the next takeaway. If you don't know, just self-educate. And I have known so many wonderful engineers who never finished high school, but are smart, self-educating people. So I'm not knocking a college education at all. But when you're interviewing people, just because they don't have one doesn't mean they can't do the job. Find out about the person and their skills, right? It's one marker, but it's not the only marker. And how many people have you had that had PhDs that couldn't code their way out of a paper bag? So, it works both ways. And so that was the second thing. I really wanted to know how it worked down to the bottom. So I started studying, I think it was, what is that processor? Anyway, there's a book about processors, and I studied it and went down to logic gates and tried to figure out my computer science and get it down, right? And that stood me well. Okay, so that's another takeaway. Third takeaway, if you don't know, keep waiting, because you got to get all the networks built in your brain. So here's a hilarious thing. They invited me to the design meetings in my second job, that first time I was hired as a programmer. Okay. Little startup called Solantra, and they still exist, by the way. And do something totally different, but they still exist. And they invited me to design meetings. Now, the people in that design meeting, there was John Carone, who was one of my great mentors, who was the CEO and brilliant, a person who helped write the DARPANet, a person who is now working for the National Science Foundation, and was the head of a research lab at Texas A&M. Those kind of level of people were there at that time. And this is like 1986-ish, maybe 87. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and I swear to you, in that first couple of meetings, I had no idea what they were talking about. None. And I'm sitting there because I have no design experience. I don't know what they're talking about, right? It's just words. And I'm just trying to take it in. I didn't say a word, not a word. And I remember after about 6 weeks, I asked a question, and John looks at me and says, "Great question, Brook. Keep listening." And that is some of the best advice I've ever had in my career, is that just because you don't know what's going on doesn't mean your brain won't get enough of the background over time to begin to be able to form the different ways. You have to wait for that to happen. Don't be in a rush. It takes a while, unless, of course, you're preternaturally disposed. My friend, I think of his name, I think his first name is Sandeep, but I can't remember his last name. Anyway, he's some, huge vice VP at some company now, a brilliant guy. But when he was in his early 20s, he was a better architect than many of the people in IT at Cisco. He just preternaturally, there are those people. But for us mere mortals, you got to wait and do the time. And eventually it will start to form, and you'll begin. The reason they hired me at Cisco is because I had all this design background. I was a really good designer by the year 2000. From 1987 to 2000, I became a really good designer with lots of experience, having designed a lot of stuff. And that's, a wonderful story right there for anybody to, when you're starting. Don't be in a rush. Let it happen, because it takes a while for us mere mortals. I guess I'm smart enough, but I'm not Sandeep, who is just preternaturally an architect by ability and brilliant in that way. But it happened. I became a designer. They took me at Cisco because so few people in InfoSec had design experience in those days, and they were building out architecture. That was the days when we were building architecture as a security architecture as a function, and they needed people with design capability, and they didn't have a lot who wanted to be security people. So, there's another thing, use what you got, because it might
And
be.
just as an aside, that's the topic that we might be covering next podcast episode. Going back to architecture and design as a foundation of IT and cybersecurity.
I don't think we can get around it. And that was what was happening. Cisco was way ahead of the curve, right? So was the NSA. They were really thinking about, and because we talked to them, that's how I know. And they were way ahead of the curve, as some companies were. Yeah, but then they were, and they were publishing that stuff, so it's all okay. But they were thinking architecturally. Go on. Sorry.
It's interesting that you mentioned like people that create the sentences that change the way that you do things, or that validated the way that you do things. To me, it's interesting because years ago, you told me one sentence that completely changed the way that I approach things. And that's a story that I've been telling people in talks, one-to-one, everything. Years and years ago, you told me nobody likes to be told that their baby is ugly. And that happened when I was looking for a way to talk to developers and architects about the things that we are finding in threat modeling. And I just couldn't get them to listen. I just couldn't get them to see that there was value in what I was saying. And then you came with that sentence, and all of a sudden it wasn't even a verb. It was like an angelic choir in the background going, and from then on, every time before I opened my mouth, I could hear you saying those words, and just me thinking, how do I sell to people these corrections that I want, these changes that I want them to make to their design that's going to make it more robust, that's going to make it better? And
well, I'm glad.
To me, it's like,
because I'm going to tell you, the first security assessment I ever did, Laura Lindsay, I was shadowing Laura Lindsay, or she was shadowing me to make sure I didn't do anything too terrible. And we went in, and when we walked out, she said, "Brook, we're not the cops. We're here to help these people be successful." And so I'll just pass that on, that, I had my own come to be nice moment, or come to the deity of your choice moment is that uh, it's a learned thing, by the way. So you took it as wisdom, but Laura, basically very softly with a wet noodle slapped my wrist and said, behave, Brooke. We're trying to help these people. and
I'm hoping we can get badges. I just want a badge that goes along with that. Like, she told you not to be a cop, but I want that badge to be in a meeting and be like, let me just show you my identification.
I am not a
Why
cop.
do you think you can tell me that? Here, let me show you why.
But that
Right,
should
Mom.
never
That's a
stop us. That should never stop us from remembering that we do hold expertise they need, one, and that we are being in service and in value. But there are things we should own. Like, I'm more than willing to talk about risk with anyone, but I remember that as the security expert and as the risk expert, I hold the ultimate responsibility for doing that well. And if one of these very lawyerly, brilliant engineers tries to lawyerly talk me out of a risk, I don't let them. In fact, I don't even engage in that conversation. I say, no, I'm the expert. I'm telling you this is the risk, and here's why. And you can agree or not agree, but this is it. That's my job. And we should always remember that.
So
as
there needs to
security
be
people.
an episode like that old Law and Order show. There's
Bum
two
bum
there's
dun
two
dun 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 dun.
there's two groups in New York in the criminal justice system: the lawyers who prosecute, prosecute,
Prosecute. What is prosecute?
and those that arrest them. We need the
These are their
cybersecurity version of that.
stories. That's what we need, though. We need that. That'd be good television right
We
there.
have to make one of those.
Yeah,
Better than
cybersecurity and risk.
that'd be so boring.
God.
Be so boring. Could you imagine how boring that show would be?
Oh no! I'm betting we'll
Well,
do a
okay,
good one.
so hold on. We'd have to do it in Mr. Robot style, so we take the hacking stuff out of the way, but make it real enough. And then you have to have I guess you'd have to have the SOC and the incident handler, an incident handling scene as part of the risk discussion.
No, we have to
otherwise
have a
those meetings are so boring.
We have to have a scene where somebody's banging on a keyboard and you can hear click, 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 and then they raise their hands and you can still hear click, 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 click.
It'll be like a mix of like the Naked Gun and those kind of parody movies with technology movies
And Buffett.
and The Office.
I can't imagine
So I really
how boring it would be to have a visual media like a movie or television or whatever, looking at someone sitting at. I mean, The Matrix did as best as you can do with someone sitting at a terminal.
So that's actually, I wanted to ask you that, Brooke, because you're over your storied career. If we look, we've seen over the years, many people have done these tiered lists of movies and things, and Neil deGrasse Tyson did one recently about science movies and Inception, not Inception, but Interstellar and those other movies, right? And you rank them. But if we look at the hacking movies over the years, the security movies over the years, like Hackers and Sneakers, and Sneakers, I think personally is probably one of the best examples of somebody sitting in front of a keyboard in front of a console hacking, right?
Apart from the universal
Mr. Robot, I
translator
guess he
thing.
actually did things properly, and they had to cut it down to an hour long episode and whatnot. But if you look back across that and the mirror of your career, right? Sneakers came out in the 80s. Hackers came out in the 90s.
I don't remember it much. But a lot of the other ones.
Sutherland and Dan Aykroyd
terrible.
was in that one.
They're just ridiculous.
They're terrible, but they're awesome.
Yeah, well,
but they're awesome. That's all the same.
They're fun, but our Swordfish. Oh, come on.
Swordfish.
Most of them, the computer part of it is just so absurd that, and I'm going to put in a plug here because
Board
I have a
games, yeah.
financial interest in it. They're building a movie off of a novel called Calculated, but there's one thing in the writer wrote. It's a wonderful novel, but there's one thing that she wrote. There's some secret thing that's supposed to like open up or close things, and I'm like, there are actual techniques. If you had talked to a security person who could have told you how this works, and you should have written that, because most kids know that this is nonsense today. And, and I hate to call out that author, but that one little bit is not well thought out. I'll just tell you. And that's
It
the
happens.
truth
And then
of most
you-
of these things.
Yeah.
Or bad. I'm
Then
sorry.
you get the hacker related movies like Jurassic Park or
I know
Independence
that. It's
Day.
Unix. Yeah.
And
Yeah, but he's an
They had
insider.
applied one patch.
He's
they play
yeah,
one
but
patch.
he's an insider, and because he has access, it's more believable to me that because think about San Francisco. Okay, another story. City and county of San Francisco. I forget what year this was. It was in the teens, early teens, 2013, 14, somewhere in there. Maybe it was 12. I don't remember. But there was a guy who he felt he had all access to every router and networking equipment in San Francisco. And because he was being terminated, he changed the passwords all to one password he knew. And then he wouldn't give it up. And he said, too bad. So I don't work there anymore. And the judge, he sat in jail for 6 weeks for contempt of court, because he wouldn't give it up.
I
And
remember that.
finally, the mayor talked him into giving it up. I think that's how it went down.
Yeah.
But
wait,
so Jurassic Park is believable in that way because someone with a lot of access can do things like that if you're not watching them. And we have examples in real life, but some of these things depend on technology we don't have. And they needn't, because there is technology we have that does that stuff.
Now, Brooke, let's reverse the premise. If you think back about the things that you saw and the things that you experienced, do you have one that could turn into a good movie?
Well, I have to think about that. Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with security, or it does, but in a different way. And I'm not sure I want to tell that story here publicly and have tied to me. Let me just say that one time I stopped a missile launch with a little Sialoom, a little light sticks, when I was an activist. And that
No. Go again from the beginning.
No, I'm not going to tell that story.
He's got to anonymize. He's got to protect his own profession.
What's the name of the time period between doing something wrong and
statutes of limitations?
Oh, I'm way beyond that. I'm way beyond
Which
that.
But in national security, there really isn't any. Just FYI.
Yeah.
Was it a
and
big
don't give anyone any idea.
It was a very dangerous
no
missile.
ideas.
So
no ideas. All right, let me tell you my favorite Brooks story. Okay, because I love Brooks' reaction to this, because he and I have a shared experience that has become a tradition for us, and the way it came together was pretty amazing, and my misunderstanding about the background behind it. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, out at RSA, Brooke and I connected, said, "Hey, let's have dinner." And he's like, "Oh, well, there's this great Chinese restaurant right by the Moscone Center. It's called Fang." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that sounds good." I think it was Brooke, myself, my wife Deb, Justin, that was in sales for Security Journey at the time, and I think Brooke, your daughter, I think might have been there. Does that sound right? The first year, and so. But we go in and we sit down, and Brooke's like, "Oh yeah, this restaurant's great. I've lived in San Francisco for a long time. I knew it." And so he calls the chef over. Turns out the chef is a world-renowned Chinese chef. Very, very non-imposing, just a very kind of normal guy, didn't have any air about him. And Brooke looks at him and says, "Chef, would you please make us a very enjoyable meal?" And so the chef grabs all the menus literally out of our hands, just rips them out of our hands. And he goes, "Okay, any allergies?" And we're like, "No." He's like, "Okay." He goes off into the kitchen. And all of a sudden, maybe 15 minutes later, dish after dish starts hitting the table of the most incredible Chinese food I've ever eaten in my life. And it's like chef was weaving he was like composing a symphony of taste and food and everything. And so I couldn't go in there and order the things that I ate because I don't have any idea what they were. I don't know what the dishes were called or anything. But dish after dish keeps coming down in front of us, and we're just eating and just having a great time. And so this has become a tradition of Brooke and mine. And so then the second year we go to Fang. They're filming a reality show inside of Fang. So we're outside and we're like, we want to go eat. They're like, okay, well, you just need to sign this release in case we use your face on the reality show. And so we're like, great. And so we end up having the same experience. We call chef over and ask him to prepare us a delicious meal. Off he takes the menus again, off he goes. But now there's cameras and people shooting, recording various scenes happening inside of this restaurant. And so we had another great time. We've done it a few other times. All of this to say, when Brooke originally told me that he lived in San Francisco for many years, I thought he had a relationship, like he knew the chef and like he was friends with the chef or something. And that's why the chef was taking such good care of him. And he's like, I think it was last year, the year before. He's like, I didn't know him before we walked here the first day. And so here I go thinking like Brooke he has this network of people and he's like, oh, let me just check with chef. Hey, I was like, no, he had never met him before. He just went with the line.
True. That's not quite true.
Okay, I'm sorry. Correct.
Let me set the stage. So the first time I had these coupons that we got, I think it was at RSA or sometime, and me and a friend went over there and redeemed our coupons for an appetizer, and we bought drinks, right? And we sat at the bar, and I went, "Wow, these are incredible." It was a northern Chinese dish. It was a really interesting take on if you've ever had the onion cakes. I really love the onion cakes, but it was very interesting. So it was on my radar as a restaurant, right? Well, for either our anniversary or my wife's birthday, they said, let's go out. Let's go to Fang. And we came in, and she's a vegetarian, so we wanted to work that out. I think she was eating fish at the time. I don't remember, but there were some restrictions, and she can't have any chili. So we just told them, and he said, will you just trust me to do the meal? And I said, sure. Rather than ordering, can I just take care of it for you? He actually said that to us. And we said, sure. I mean, how bad can it be, right? And it was incredible. It was just as incredible as everyone we've had. So I had that experience already, and I knew it was better.
Wait. Did you just 4-question framework see the restaurant?
Actually, I was thinking, the chef goes in, the chief waiter comes to him and says, what's happening? He says, it's that guy again. Just give him one of everything.
Well, that could be.
It's
but then I went to the bathroom, and all the gold medals are not hanging where you see them. They're out next to the bathroom, hidden down. You have to go to the bathroom, and you see them and I realized, oh, that's why this meal is so good, because this guy's a gold medal winning chef, and and it's an open kitchen, so you can see everybody working, and he's watching to make sure everything's going. But he's out in the room. So that's kind of the whole story. That's the background on which I had confidence that if we just told Chef Fang to get us dinner, it would be fantastic.
But I had still thought that you guys were friends, and that's why we were getting this treatment. Because I'm like, man, Brooke is a baller. Look at this guy. He's just like, chef.
I don't know him from
It was a good move.
So Brooke threat models the restaurant with what can go wrong, chooses to ignore all of the things that can go wrong. And he did a good job. And he did a good job.
He called out the allergy first, so he won't deal with assumptions. That's it.
That's good stuff.
So it wasn't entirely uninformed, but it wasn't as informed as you thought. Clearly, no, I don't know that chef.
You must be fun must be fun at sushi. You must be fun at a sushi restaurant. You just show up at the bar and don't give me stuff.
Yeah, well, omakase. But you know what? My favorite birthday party is to have a roll your own sushi party at my house. and everyone brings whatever they have. So if you have vegans, they bring their stuff and they roll it. I make a whole bunch of sushi rice and put out the nori and boards and knives and everything and all the stuff you need, and just let people roll whatever they're going to roll. And if somebody wants to put, they need beef in there, fine, whatever. And and those people who are fish centric or never eat fish, whatever. And it's hilarious. You have to have a
I,
mat underneath the table because rice goes
I lost it. I put out the knives.
Yeah, I was going to say you have to have you have to have a first aid kit nearby. I'm sure.
It's not for children. It's
An
not a
ambulance standing
child.
by.
Let's talk about threat modeling in daily life right there, huh?
That's true. That's true. Brooke, I wanted to ask another question just because I want to hog our time here, primarily.
Sure.
But I
What
know
else is
that
new?
in conversation, what else is in conversations that we've had offline, when we talked about your musical career, that it's just something I never understood the depth of your musical career, and also some of the famous people that you've played music with was pretty cool to me to hear that.
Wow.
And if you're willing to share, I'd love to just share with our audience the kind of the other side of away from technology when you're in the music world. Tell us a little bit about your background and history there. And if you don't mind, I'd love to hear those stories again about some of those famous people you played with.
Sure. If it's of interest to folks, it doesn't have much to do with any of this, but it does, because our whole being comes to our work, whether you think so or not. Whether you're just putting on your little face and you think so, you're still bringing all your stuff, right? So you're all there, and the best job, I think, is one that lets you be all there, not in an unbounded way. It's not a therapy session. Work isn't a therapy session, right? If you come in and say, yes, I'm going
Therapy
through a
after
horrible, right?
Yeah, it leads you to.
You can come in and say, I'm having a really bad day. I just had a fight with my spouse and it's just horrible. That's fine. People want to know that, but they don't want to sit there and go over all the problems and fix your relationship with your spouse. There's a bound
Excuse
there.
me while I grind my axe.
Yes,
Literally.
exactly. Or whatever, however you think, I'm staying out of people's relationships. But so, yes, I've been a lifelong musician. I really wanted to be a musician, first a blues musician and then a jazz musician, really desperately. And I've trained really hard. I went to conservatory for a couple of years. I've got a lot of background there. I've taught music for years. I even taught jazz improvisation for UCLA Extension. I have a lot of history here. Whether I'm good enough to actually be a working jazz musician is another question. It's a very rarefied universe. So that would be in the ears of the beholder. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time trying to learn how to play and play well. Whether I do or not is, again, in the ears of the beholder. But in that journey, I have met some interesting people. For a while, I was running into, oh God, his name's it'll come to me. But let me tell some stories here. So when I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, in I think 1973, it was late 1973. Because remember, I'm old. And I'll just say that security, depending upon how you count it, is either my fifth, sixth, or seventh career. So yeah, just remember that. So I moved there, and we were trying to, form a band and do the usual band thing. And I was trying to get involved, and we had some really great players. And it turned out that Bo Diddley was looking for a backup band for a singer he was producing, Cookie V. And she's fantastic, by the way, Cookie V. And so we went out and auditioned, and she said, this is the band. You guys are great. And so that brought us to working with Bo every single day. He was doing production. We were in his studio every day. We were, getting tips, to how to be successful, because he was producing Cookie. And the thing is, whenever we would go out and do a gig, at least the first night, sometimes more, Bo would play with us. when he wasn't on tour. And so I have played with Bo Diddley a lot. And was a wonderful man, I will tell you, an absolutely wonderful man and a great mentor. I learned so much about the business of music and why that is actually just as important. I mean, I used to be the kind of guitar player. I'd stand sort of in my crappy clothes, sort of facing away from the audience because I was scared of them and just blowing my horn and trying to make the singer sound great, right? That's my job. But Bo taught me to be a presence on stage. And I mean, this is a man who could walk on stage. You're playing like the introductory thing, as you do. And Bo walks on stage and he starts singing. And within 15 seconds, the room is dead on him. This man had charisma beyond charisma. He could make a room of people just shut up and pay attention to him and only him. And meanwhile, you're trying to, because he wasn't like the most schooled musician, although a very good musician. And so you're busy trying to tune to his guitar and stuff because he didn't like tune it to a tuner or anything. And he's a little out and you're like, whoa, let's get it in here. But yeah, Bo's a wonderful man, absolutely wonderful, supportive, delightful. Went in the studio with him, did a lot of work with him, played with him a lot. So that was the Bo Diddley story. And then, of course, Cookie got pregnant and had a fight with her husband and quit the band, and all things fall apart. Right when we were about to break, of course.
But did you ever play with Gary McGraw?
No. Gary is a great violinist. If you go listen to it's called the Something Liberals. It's the name of a cocktail. But it's the name of his band. But I've heard them. I've heard recordings and live things. He's
good.
He's very good. So anyway, that's one story, and the other story, probably of interest to people, is playing with Chuck Berry. So when Chuck Berry was going around, he would often use backup bands, not always, but often use backup bands, just in the area. And so Chuck Berry was coming to town, and they needed to put a backup band, so they hired the best jazz musicians in town. This is in San Luis Obispo, okay? And there are four of us, bass player, or three of us, bass player, guitar player, and drummer. And I worked with both of them, but particularly the drummer was the drummer in this really incredible Afro jazz ensemble that we wrote music for and played with. Leon White, great player, like phenomenal. So he walks in and he looks and he says, "Guitar player, you can leave." Because I don't need a guitar player, right? I just need a bass player and drummer. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I start going, nah, wait, let's hear you. This is a true story. Let's hear you. This story has a great punchline too, by the way. Just hang with it. So, okay. So we start playing and I know exactly what to do. And he goes, "You can stay. But drummer, you're playing the wrong stuff." And I thought Leon was fine, right? And Leon says, "Okay, tell me what to play." And he says, "Simpler. Just keep it simple." And we started, and he's like playing 4/8 bars. I mean, not a whole tune, just a little bit of a tune to get the feel for it. And he stops us and he says, "No, simple." And this goes on for maybe 6 or 7 different starts. Now, Leon White, I never saw him upset ever. The man was the coolest creature on the bandstand. He did not get upset. You could critique him. You could say, "This doesn't work. This does work." He was just really great to work with. And he's getting mad. I can tell. He's getting frustrated. And you can sort of see the smoke coming out of his ears, although nothing nasty is coming out of his mouth, right? And finally, Chuck says, "Dang it, play country." And Leon goes, "Oh, okay." And we drop into the tune. And he goes, tick, to tick, to tick, to tick. And play 4 bars. And Chuck says, "Perfect." That was the whole rehearsal. We never played one song through, not one. Because you're supposed to know how to play these bloody songs. You're not supposed to need to rehearse, the kind of simple chord changes that Chuck uses. You're supposed to be able to hear it. He gives you a key, you start, you go. You pay attention. Okay, so great, we're ready. Chuck says, "Hey," realizing I can play, he says, "Let's play a little." So curtains closed, nothing's happening. Chuck and I, for about 30 minutes, trade blues lines and play blues. He was a phenomenal blues player. You never hear it in his stuff. Phenomenal blues player. I was blown away. But he was really kind to me and he liked my playing too, and it was all great. And so I'm having this moment of like, hey, I'm making it, man. I'm with Chuck Berry. I'm playing the blues. It's great. This is life. Right? Okay. End of afternoon session. First gig. He launches into Roll Over Beethoven. And he does his shtick. I mean, this is a 70-year-old or late 60s-year-old man. He's doing splits on stage, the whole thing, right? And I mean, the man was in shape, let me tell you. And he's doing his thing, and I'm just cranking behind him the way you're supposed to do it, keeping it right in there, everything. And he turns to me and he says, take it. There are news cameras because this is his opening show, right? This is a big deal. And I'm like sucking it up stupidly. Let me get to that. So I wailed through the first chorus and I should have stopped right there. But oh no, I went on to the second chorus because the cameras are on me. I'm having my moment, right? I'm playing with Chuck Berry. I'm soloing. It's great. And he walks to the microphone about halfway through the chorus and says, ain't gonna let that guitar player steal my show. Boom. And I go right back. And that was the first and last solo I ever played with Chuck Berry.
So wait, this is recorded somewhere. We can find this.
I imagine it is because it happened.
Oh God. Let's. That
And
must
for
be
the
awesome.
rest of the gigs,
Must be on the
I
Internet
just
Archive somewhere.
I just did what I was supposed to do and played my lines like I'm supposed to play them. And there were no more solos.
Oh
What was the name of your
that's
band
awesome.
What was the name of your band at the time?
I don't remember. Oh, well, the band we came from was the Schoenfield Jackson African Jazz Ensemble.
That must have been awesome. I'm thinking like Back to the Future.
Yeah,
And
Michael J.
when he's
Fox.
playing, yeah, and everybody like stops and looks at him like, your kids are gonna love this stuff.
True story, man.
That's
True, absolute,
a great
100% true story.
You have stage presence. You worked well with them. They should have cast you as Marty McFly.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how to act. I don't know how to hit the mark. I don't know how to keep my eyes open, for the camera.
You could have been the stunt. You could have been the stunt double. You could have been the stand-in.
Yeah.
Well, Brooke, that was
awesome.
that
True
was great.
story.
Thank you for sharing those stories. I know I've had a chance to hear those before, and I was like, I'm gonna try to find a way to get those out so that others can hear. Because there's more to
awesome.
life. But there's more to life than security, right?
Yep.
People can get so caught up in this is what we do, and it's about the industry, and it's about I'm an influencer, and I'm this, and I'm that, and everybody's looking at me. And there's so much more to life than what we do at work. Like,
Well,
and
can I
so that's
tell
why I
you?
love that story.
Can I tell you what playing jazz in San Francisco with some of the greatest players I've ever played with taught me? So, here I am, young. I was young. I was maybe 20, 25 or something, 28 when I played with Chuck and 23 when I played with Bo. Young, full of it, cocky, whatever. Years later, and I'm playing with Joyce Baker, who is one of the greatest drummers, again, I've ever played with, fabulous musician. You can go and see Opie Bellis any old time you want. She plays with the monster players. She plays festivals. She's great. She's absolutely phenomenal singer. And we had a couple of bass players that walked through that band with us. Most of them really great. Anyway, what I learned from playing with them for 5 years is it's about the ensemble, not about my solo. It's about the ensemble and how we support each other. So if Joyce just happens in the middle of something to drop into a reggae beat, you go into the right reggae guitar part and you make it really excellent. Absolutely excellent, even though one would never expect that in the middle of a walking jazz solo. Or, I remember one time Joyce was really mad because we were being replaced by almost said it, not a nice word, not a very good or skilled band, but they did covers and we were being replaced and Joyce was really mad at that gig. And I mean, oh my God, it was like sitting next to, it was like sitting next to the Jones brother, the phenomenal drummer. I mean, it was so amazing. She's so good, but it was a bit loud and cantankerous, I can tell you. So you make that happen. Whatever's happening, you make it happen, and you make it happen really good, and you're there in service to the whole sound. And when we do security, it's the same thing. We're in service to finding the risk tolerance that is appropriate, and then serving that and reaching that. Not perfection, not close all risks. Sorry, folks, not going to happen. And it's impossible, but we're there in service to this larger goal that it takes an ensemble to reach. And that's what playing in that band really, really taught me over those years, is to give up on my ego so much and my worries and my insecurities and being out in front, and just play the music as best as possible and make it sound.
And that comes
great.
super clear when we work with you, because that's the way that you work with us.
Yeah, I think we got to end, because
Yep.
that's the
Yep.
best
That's a
place.
perfect
Unfortunately.
place.
But that's a great place to end. What with that message from Brook, that's what people need to take away from this. And so, Brook, thank you
Yep.
for
Mic drop.
being a part of the security table, and we'll do this again soon, because this is fun. I like to hear stories. I like to hear the stories that you have. So we really do love you, and
We do.
look forward to a future show again. Talk again.
You are really such amazing people. Never forget that.